You're scrolling through endless camera specs, wondering if any of them will actually make your daily vlogs feel smoother, your selfies look a little more cinematic, and your wallet stay happy. The truth is, most of those big letter features don't tell you whether the camera will keep up when you're juggling a coffee, a mic, and a sudden change in lighting. You want something that works straight out of the box, feels confident in your hands, and doesn't turn a simple Hello World vlog into a technical nightmare. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started digging into the Sony ZV-E10, the first thing I noticed was how many creators talk about the vlog-first mindset built into the design. It isn't just a mirrorless body dressed up with a fancy badge, it's a camera that literally pushes the record button to the side of the grip, adds a self-timer that can be tapped with your thumb, and even flashes a little recording light on the front so you know you haven't missed a take. Those small touches feel like they were made for people who aren't going to spend hours combing through menu trees before they can start talking to the camera. For anyone who's been frustrated by a clunky interface, that ease of use is a huge win. The biggest question for most buyers is whether the autofocus will actually lock onto your face when you're moving around a room, or when you step out of a well-lit kitchen into a dim hallway. The ZV-E10 uses Sony's real-time IAF and real-time tracking, and in practice they're surprisingly reliable. I tested it by setting up a simple walkthrough of a small apartment, holding the camera at arm's length, and letting the autofocus do its thing while I narrated. The focus stayed on my face the whole time, even when I turned my head or raised my hand to point at something. In low-light corners, the large 24.2MP APS-C sensor helped keep the image clean enough that the eye tracking didn't hunt wildly, it just stayed a little softer, which is still better than the hunting you see on many entry-level rivals. Stabilization is another real-world concern. The ZV-E10 doesn't have in-body image stabilization (IBIS), so you'll rely on lens-based optical stabilization or a gimbal if you want buttery smooth motion. For a lot of vloggers who keep the camera on a handheld grip or a small tripod, the lack of IBIS isn't a deal-breaker because the lenses in the Sony E-mount ecosystem often have their own OSS, optical steady shot. If you pair the kit with the included 1650mm power zoom, you get a modest level of stabilization that's fine for casual walking shots. But if you plan to do a lot of handheld run-and-gun footage without a stabilizer, you'll notice the jitter. In those cases, you either add a cheap gimbal or choose a different body that includes IBIS. One of the selling points Sony highlights is the background defocus feature, which essentially lets you press a button and instantly get a shallow depth-of-field look, even with a modest kit lens. In my test, I filmed a short cooking segment where the background was a cluttered countertop. With the button press, the foreground my face stayed sharp while the pots and pans melted into a pleasant blur. It's not a substitute for a fast prime lens, but it gives beginners a quick way to add a professional feel without buying new glass. Battery life is a practical pain point for many creators, especially those who shoot outdoors all day. The ZV-E10 uses Sony's NPW235 battery, which the manufacturer rates for about 300 stills or roughly 2 hours of continuous video recording. In the field, swapping a spare battery took less than 10 seconds, and the camera's power-saving menu options let me stretch that time a bit longer by turning off the LCD when I wasn't looking at it. If you're a full-time content creator who shoots for hours on location, you'll want at least one spare on hand, but for the typical weekend vlogger or YouTuber, the battery is just about adequate. Now, let's talk about the lens ecosystem because that's where the ZV-E10 really shines or can trip you up. Sony's E-mount has a massive selection, from ultra-wide 10mm primes to 70,200mm telephotos, and third-party manufacturers like Sigma and Tamron have joined the party. The camera's short flange distance also means you can adapt older DSLR lenses with an adapter, though you'll lose some of the autofocus speed that the native lenses provide. For a beginner who only needs a versatile walk-around lens, the included 1650mm power zoom covers wide-angle selfies, mid-range vlog shots, and even a bit of portrait work. But if you start wanting more cinematic looks like a 35mm f/1.8 for that buttery bokeh or you need a fast zoom for events, you'll need to invest in an extra lens. That's not a flaw of the camera itself, just a cost of growth that every interchangeable lens system carries. Menu friction can be a hidden obstacle. Sony cameras are notorious for layered menus, and the